How's it going, everyone? Sethphir here, and welcome back to another Tower of Fantasy video. Today I am going to be showing you how to max your damage, max your DPS. We're going to go ahead and break this video down into a few parts. The first part is going to include combat score. The second part is going to talk about buffs. The third part will talk about the weapons themselves. The fourth part will be about gadgets, and the final part will be about combat in general. So let's go ahead and dive into the first section. Let's talk about combat score. So combat score, what is combat score? That is going to be the total level of your character's relative power. It's going to list combat effectiveness, combat score here, and as you can see, mine is quite high. How do I get it up there? That's a very commonly asked question that I see a lot of, so we'll go ahead and talk about that. So the first source of getting your combat score up is going to be your weapons. Your weapons level and their star level is going to determine how much combat score they give. So the more stars an item has, the stronger it is going to be. As you can see, this comparison of my Nemesis 6-star versus my 2-star Samir, they give quite a significantly larger portion of combat score. The next thing you have is going to be your matrices attached to that weapon and the star level of those matrices. You can see that I have a few legendary matrices, and each one is giving me a boost to CS, this one 434, compared to the purple 234. So there is quite a big difference, even though both of these are the same level. So that is going to factor into your combat score as well. The next thing is going to be your suppressor level. The suppressor level will increase your overall stats and effectiveness, so make sure that you have that leveled up, and that's just going to power you up along the way. Then after that, we will have your gear. Gear is an important category. There are 8 gear pieces total, and there are 2 types of way to increase your gear along with a bonus, and we'll talk about that here in a second. So the first way to increase your gear is going to be the enhancement category. If you enhance an item, it enhances the slot, not the item itself. So you can transfer this to any gear you get down the line, so feel free to upgrade, no problem. When you enhance, it's going to require booster modules, and every 5 levels will require advancement modules, and this is going to scale up later into the game, so just keep that in mind. The next way to enhance your gear is going to be called advancement. Advancement is when you feed other gear or crystals that you get from farming the little mining nodes out in the world, and you may get them as rewards as well. When you feed them into this piece of gear, it is going to enhance the star level and increase the gear score of the equipment, and it's also going to give you a bolstered effect of increasing one of the randomly rolled stats on that piece of gear. So if we take a look at this, we can see that my purple gloves are giving me 861 combat score compared to a blue 441, and that's just going to get better as you increase the enhancement level and also the star rarity. On top of that, we do have a bonus. If you get all of your items to +5, you will receive a boost to your stats, so go ahead and keep that in mind. This again happens at +10, +15, and it keeps going on and on. Now that we have talked about all of that, the only other way to get a small boost would be Mia's Kitchen, so having a buff on your character does technically give you a boost in combat score. You'll see it when you use Mia's Kitchen, your combat score will go up by like 20 points or something like that. So all of those factors combined will be how you get combat score in general. That's going to increase the strength of your character. The next category we have to go into is called buffs. Buffs are very, very, very powerful. So the first buff we're going to talk about is the resonance effect. Here we can see we have fierce attack, which is increasing my final damage by 10%, and in team play it's going to increase it by 40%. The way you can look at that is if you go ahead and head over to your character and like character screen or weapon screen, sorry. And if you go here, you should be able to see the resonance of every type. So if you have 2 DPS weapons, it'll be here. And then all of these things will contribute towards the way that your character performs in terms of damage. So having that DPS type will definitely increase your damage by a lot. You can also have a balanced type to get some more boost to shattering shields, which is something that is very strong. And then the tank type as well. So just be aware of those things. Now that we have talked about resonance, let's talk about elemental resonance. There is only one elemental resonance character in the game currently on global, and that is Nemesis. She has the Volt resonance effect, which will increase Volt attack and resistance when you have 2 Volt weapons equipped. There will be some in the future, with Ruby having the Fire resonance, Sakifua having the Ice resonance, and I believe Lyra having a Physical resonance, so be sure to keep an eye out for those characters. The next thing we have to talk about is the Simulacrum trait. You can see that I have a bonus right here, which is going to come from the awakening of a character. You can only have one character's Simulacrum trait active at a given time, but you can awaken multiple characters and obtain their bonuses, so you can swap out whenever you wish. This one's going to be up to you, but if you're looking for damage, I would prefer to use Samir or Subasa's awakening. They are quite powerful, and you do not have to have the character equipped on one of your weapons in order to activate this bonus. You could just activate the bonus. The only way you can feed gifts into the character is if you do have a copy of it, though, so you will need at least one copy of the character in order to activate that. The next thing we have is the food buff category. You can have one food on your character, and I usually choose the elemental boosting type of the whatever I use the most. So since I'm using Samir and Nemesis, I want this Volt attack 2% total and 150 Volt attack food for 1,200 seconds. It's very powerful. Purple is currently the strongest food that you can get into the game, so having this on your bar can definitely help you out a long way. So I'll go ahead and eat it and show you the buff down at the bottom. It should be right here, and this is definitely going to help you out. Once you have done that, you can be aware once again that Mia's Kitchen does provide buffs as listed in the descriptions. It says powerful buffs. I've seen things like 5% Volt damage. I've seen things like crit attack. So it's just kind of random what you get. You can also get defensive buffs. So before you go into something very strong, you could consider using your Mia's Kitchen to get you that little extra edge. On top of that, there are buffs that come from characters. If we take a look at certain characters, we can see that Nemesis will be providing a buff for my characters at the 5th star, which means that when I use her one skill, I'm going to increase everybody's attack by a certain percent for a little while, so I can go ahead and get that activated if I use that. There are other characters that buff, like Tsubasa and several others, so just be aware that those are buffs that you can obtain. The next category that we have is weapons. Weapons are very, very powerful. As we stated before, the level of the weapon will matter quite a lot. All of my weapons being at level 80 increases their damage by quite a large portion, and on top of that, you can increase the star level. When you increase the level of the weapon, you're also going to level up its skills. So since everything's 80, I'm going to have level 8 skills, which means that all of my attacks are going to do more damage in general. So they're all going to be powered up, including my skill and my discharge. So make sure that you level up your weapons to max that you're using so that you can increase their damage the furthest. The weapons also have base stats, if you are not aware. As you can see on the right side of my screen, it does have a shatter rating and a charge rating. Shatter rating is going to increase the amount of damage that you're going to deal to enemy shields, and the charge rating is going to increase the amount of discharge or ultimate currency that you gain when hitting an enemy. So the higher the charge rate, the faster your ultimate's going to generate, and the higher the shatter, the quicker you are going to destroy the enemy shields. In addition to that, you have raw stats that are going to be obtained when you equip a weapon. For Nemesis, it's attack, HP, and crit. Samir has the same thing, and so does this simulacrum of Shiro. But if we take a look at other weapons, like let's look at Meryl. Meryl has attack, resistance, and HP. So this is more of a tank weapon. Zero has attack, resistance, HP, a little bit more of a supporting weapon, and it varies from character to character. So make sure to match those up, because if you want to get the highest crit, having like triple crit weapons can be something that you could aim for and consider, because all of these will accumulate towards your total, which you can see on your character screen, and you'll be able to see exactly how much crit you have when attacking a certain monster of your same level. So since that's out of the way, now we're going to go ahead and jump into the next thing, and that's just going to be testing your skills and checking your skills. If I go to this little icon below the weapon itself, I can see this magnifying glass, and when I look at these, I can see exactly how much damage my skills do. But do be aware that some of these descriptions aren't the best in general, so just pretty much keep in mind that this one, while it states a low attack, if I attack with Shiro, I can see that my weapon is coming back. And when I test that on a monster, it hits them once and then comes back and hits them a second time. So that value is going to be slightly different. You're going to have to play around with things and test it yourself. So test everything. If something looks good and it says it does a good amount of damage, test it. Test it on a monster. See what it does. What does it actually do? What's happening there? Is there any extra hits associated with it? How many times is it hitting? Make sure you test all these things. It's definitely going to go a long way. Now that we've talked about weapons, we're going to talk about gadgets. Gadgets or relics is really powerful, and you can have up to 3 relic slots equipped at a time. You can swap between the slots by pressing the G key, and you can have 2 relics per slot. Once you enter combat, you engage in combat, then your relic slot is going to be locked until you exit combat for a brief moment. So there are small windows where you kill enemies and others are spawning, where you can switch to another relic set and then use the relics from that situation. So that's going to be really good for you. So make sure that you have powerful relics activated and you're going to be using them constantly. The next thing that we have to talk about on the gadgets or relics is going to be buffs versus DPS gadgets. There are several relics in the game with a lot of power and potential. If you take a look at them, some of them list stat numbers like, oh, this one does a percentage of attack, or this one provides a buff of character final damage by 20% for 10 seconds. So the general rule of thumb is that early on in the game, when you have something that does a percentage of your attack, it's probably going to be a little bit better because you're basing it on your character's base power level, and you're probably not going to have that many starred characters, you're not going to have a lot of stuff, so a lot of these things will be a little bit better. But towards the end game, you start to see a lot more use of things like Kuant, where you can increase your final damage by 20% for 10 seconds, because what's going to probably happen is you're going to have 6-star weapons of everything, and then getting a 20% damage buff on top of that might just be more damage than just something like a missile barrage. So it's kind of up to you to balance that. There are several SSR relics that also have effects like this, like 25% increased damage dealt by the 5-star Omnium Shield, but these things are so far in the future, it's probably better to aim at the smaller ones for now and then work towards those other ones in the grand scheme of things. Now that we have those out of the way, there are star levels for the relics, so these are going to power up as you go on, and they add really massive abilities. Colossus Arms, for example, will fire 2 missiles with every single auto attack when you upgrade it to 1 star, and that will be further increased to 4 missiles every 3, or at the 3-star rank, so you're going to do a lot of damage. A lot of these adds bonus effects and healing, and like we saw with the Omnium Shield, you get a damage boost down there, so there are a lot of very, very powerful relics that get even stronger over time, so make sure you're working towards the one that you desire. Now that we have gadgets out of the way, let's go ahead and talk about combat. So combat is very important. The first thing we need to know is about shatter. So shatter is a very important thing. Enemies have shields within this game, and we're going to go to our favorite test subject, the Behemoth, because he has a lot of shields. So we'll go ahead and hit him, and once we hit him for a little bit, he will activate his shield. And as you can see, now I'm doing reduced damage. The shield is going to reduce your damage by 50% until you break it, and certain weapons are better at shattering than others, so this is going to probably do a little bit more in terms of shatter because Shiro has higher shatter than Samir does. So keep that in mind, enemies do have shields there. The next thing you need to know about is a perfect dodge or the dodge. Managing your dodges or perfect dodges are going to allow you to make the most of combat. If you perfect dodge, you can see that my ultimate just came back up. So whenever you enter a perfect dodge field or a purple field, you will be able to trigger an ultimate charge for free. So you're going to gain a free ultimate charge, so it pays to be good at the game. It really pays to perfect dodge and time that enemy's attack at the right moment. It's going to go a long way for you. Once you have that down, you need to manage your dodge skills. You can see on the right side of my screen near my mouse, I have 3 little bubbles. These are going to replenish constantly, so the idea is to keep those not full. So you want to make use of them at all points in times, and that's going to be the way to go, because the more dodge use that you get, you can have powerful skills. Like for example with Shiro, when I dodge an attack, I'm going to throw out a very powerful ring that's going to bounce and do a bunch of damage, and when I dodge with Nemesis, I can fire off twin orbs that shoot a slowing field, and they're very obnoxious to deal with, so managing those dodge skills is going to be very important. And then also your stamina. When you use certain attacks, like if I were to shoot with Samir, you can see my stamina gauge in the bottom going down. But more importantly, when I fly up in the air with Sethphir and I start to drain my stamina with this aerial attack, you can see it deplete very fast. So managing that gauge and using your skills and cooldowns when you have your stamina depleted is probably a wise idea, because then you'll be regenerating that stamina while I use things like my 1 skill for Sethphir and my 1 skill for Nemesis. My dodge and my stamina is constantly replenishing. The next thing you need to know about, and what you probably noticed in the first part of the video, was the elemental weaknesses. So this monster right here has a weakness to fire. When I attack him, I can see it below his name and it says fire down, so that means he is weak against fire, and he is resistant against physical. It doesn't list the monster's resistance, sadly. You just have to figure that one out by hitting it and seeing, hey, look, that one's resistant to physical. Okay, well, that's unfortunate. I guess I have to use a different weapon. So just keep in mind that that's going to happen. And with any 4-player activity like Frontier Clash, Void Rift, or anything like that, you are going to get this little screen that will show you exactly what the monster is resistant against before you go in. So we'll take an example of that for here. So if we go over here to challenge the Frontier Clash, I can see that today the monster is going to resist 50% of flame damage. So you can prepare ahead of time and switch up your weapons accordingly. As the game progresses, it is wise to have 1 weapon of every type at least, so that you can deal with certain types of monsters and enemies. Now that you have done that, the next thing that you need to do is to make sure that you are not wasting any cooldowns. An ideal DPS rotation is making sure that you're using your ultimates and not filling up past 2 gauges, because you can have extra gauge in the bottom right filled up, but you cannot trigger 2 whole ultimates banked up in total, so make sure you use it before you're about to fill up. And then you want to also make sure you're using every single cooldown at your disposal as quickly as you possibly can, because I want to put all these weapons 1 skill on cooldown so that they're regenerating. And once they're all regenerating, that's good. That's maximum damage, because that means they're going to be coming back faster. The same rule is going to apply for relics. So at the start of a fight, I want to make sure I pop these relics and get their cooldowns going, especially if you have something low on cooldown like a 50-second or 60-second relic. Now, if you do have a relic that has a massive cooldown like Colossus Arms, you want to time that for an appropriate situation, because obviously being on a 300-second cooldown means that it's very unlikely that that's probably going to come up again in that fight, so save it for an ideal time. The next thing we're going to talk about is making sure that you do not waste your big cooldowns against shields. So do try to pop out the Colossus Arms after you've broken a target's shield, because the shield will regenerate over time, and it is very important to not have a big massive cooldown be mitigated by 50% because you used it at the wrong time when a shield regenerated and popped back up. Alright, that's going to be pretty much everything. I think that this guide should help you in general to increase your overall damage. If it did, let me know down below. Let me know which tips helped you the most, and I'll continue to do things like this, explaining game mechanics, so that I can help you out along the way. I appreciate the viewership and watching all of these guides and the massive support that we've been getting. It truly means a lot to me. If this video helped you in any way, shape, or form, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the bell, and we will be coming out with more content and live streams on YouTube every single day. Thank you for watching once again, and we will catch you in the next video.